Water crisis. 7 American cities running out of TME today. You used roughly 80 gallons of water. You didn't think about a single one. The morning shower, the coffee, the toilet, the pasta water you dumped straight into the sink. 80 gallons gone, and tomorrow 80 more will show up like clockwork. Except there's no magic involved. There's a system, and systems fail. Right now, 7 major American cities are watching that system quietly collapse. Not in a simulation. Not in a government report no one reads. Right now. Reservoirs are emptying. Underground water supplies are being hollowed out. Pipes older than most grandparents are still carrying the load. And the population keeps arriving, keeps turning on faucets, keeps assuming something will come out. Here's what water scientists lose sleep over. By the time a city realizes it has a water crisis, that crisis is already 10 years old. The reservoir didn't drop last week. It's been dropping for years. Nobody looked. Nobody ever does. Because water is the one thing people take completely for granted. Until the morning they can't. We built a scoring system. 5 vulnerability metrics. We ran every major U.S. metro through all 5. 7 cities didn't just score poorly. They broke the scale. And here's what should genuinely concern you. If you live in one of these cities right now, your home's value rests on a water supply that may not exist in 4 years. Your job depends on infrastructure that engineers are quietly calling unsustainable. Your children's school runs on a system that is cracking under pressure. And no one sent you a warning. They won't. The warning arrives when the faucet doesn't work. And by that point, 4 million other people are reading the same warning at the same moment. So let me be the warning. The 5 vital SIGNs before the countdown. You need to understand the framework. Otherwise, this is just a list of cities, and lists don't save anyone. Metric 1. Reservoir trend. This is visible water. Lakes, dams, surface storage. Think of it as a city's checking account. If the balance has been falling for 10 straight years, that's not a rough patch. That's a trend. And trends don't reverse because you wish hard enough. Metric 2. Aquifer depletion. This is the water you can't see. Underground reserves that took thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of years to accumulate. The savings account. The dark reality. Once you drain an aquifer past a certain depth, the rock above it compresses permanently. The space that held the water physically collapses. You cannot refill a crushed container. That water is not coming back. Not in your lifetime. Not in your grandchildren's. Metric 3. Population to capacity. Ratio. How many people are drawing from a system designed for far fewer? It's like loading 10 people onto a 5-person lifeboat. The boat doesn't sink immediately, but every wave gets closer to the edge. Phoenix has been adding 70,000 residents a year to a system that was engineered in the 1960s. Metric 4. 2030 climate projections. Not a guess. These are NOAA and IPCC models, the same ones that predicted the megadrought the American Southwest is living through right now. Drought frequency, heat intensity, and precipitation shifts through 2030. The forecast. Not the hope. Metric 5. Infrastructure age. The average age of pipes, treatment facilities, and distribution networks. Old infrastructure leaks. Some cities lose 30 to 40% of their water supply before it ever reaches a faucet. Old infrastructure contaminates. And under stress, old infrastructure collapses catastrophically. Some of these cities are running on systems built before color television existed. Let that land while you're drinking from 5 metrics. 5 vital signs. The city at the bottom of this list failed every single one. But we're starting at number 7, because even number 7 should alarm you. Number 7. Denver. The city built on disappearing snow. Denver, Colorado. The mile-high city. Mountain views. A booming tech sector. One of the fastest-growing metros in the interior West. And its entire water supply depends on something that is steadily disappearing. Snowpack. Denver doesn't sit on a Great Lake. There's no massive aquifer beneath it. What it has is an engineering system that captures Rocky Mountain snowmelt, stores it in reservoirs like Lake Granby and Dillon Reservoir, and moves it east through tunnels bored under the Continental Divide. It's a 20th century marvel. And the 20th century had substantially more snow. The numbers. NOAA projects a 15 to 25% reduction in Colorado snowpack by 2030. That's not the pessimistic scenario, that's the median. Meanwhile, the Denver metro has added more than 500,000 residents since 2010. More people. Less snow. Same pipes. The Denver Basin Aquifer, the backup plan, is dropping roughly 2 feet per year. The Colorado River, which feeds both Lake Powell and Lake Granby, has been in long-term decline for over 2 decades. The waterline stain on Lake Powell's canyon walls is visible from orbit. Denver's infrastructure is holding for now. Average pipe age sits around 55 years, with some sections dating to the 1940s. Not the worst on this list. But the city is negotiating from a position of weakness in Colorado River. Compact talks and every percentage point of water lost. Upstream is a percentage point Denver cannot recover. Downstream. Worst case by 2030. Snowpack. Drops 25% or more. Compact renegotiations force mandatory cuts. Denver enters Stage 3 restrictions, no outdoor irrigation. Mandatory household rationing, a supply gap that opens to 20% with no source available to close it. And through all of it, people keep moving there, because nobody relocates to Denver for its water policy. They come for the mountains. The mountains are the problem. That's number 7. And if that sounds manageable, remember, Denver is the best case scenario on this list. Number 6. Miami. Danger from below. Here's a question that should keep every Miami homeowner awake. What happens when the ocean infiltrates your water supply from underneath? Miami is the only city on this list that could lose its drinking water, not from drought, not from overuse, but from saltwater intrusion. And it's already underway. The Biscayne Aquifer lies beneath South Florida like a shallow limestone sponge, porous, relatively fast to recharge, and the sole drinking water source for more than 6 million people in the Miami metro. The problem? It sits only about 20 feet below the surface, and the Atlantic Ocean is right there, pressing inland every single day as sea levels climb. Right now, the saltwater front beneath Miami-Dade County is advancing toward the western well fields that supply the city at more than 1,000 feet per year. That's a recorded measurement, not a projection. The U.S. Geological Survey has been tracking it for years. 6 to 12 additional inches of sea level rise by 2030. The current scientific consensus will push that intrusion past barriers that were designed to hold for decades. They won't hold. Miami has no major surface reservoirs. There is no backup system. Lake Okeechobee exists to the north, but it's already overcommitted, politically entangled, and ecologically stressed. The infrastructure averages about 40 years old, built on porous coral rock that allows leakage throughout. The system was sized for roughly 3 million people. 6 million are using it right now. Worst case by 2030. Saltwater breaches the western wellfield barriers. Miami-Dade is forced to abandon its primary extraction sites. Coastal neighborhoods see drinking water salinity exceed federal safety limits. The city scrambles for alternative sources that don't yet exist. Most people hear water crisis and picture desert. They picture Arizona, not Miami. That's exactly what makes this dangerous. Nobody is preparing for the water problem they can't see. In Miami, that problem is rising from below. Number 5, San Antonio. 2 million people. One source: San Antonio, Texas. Population: over 2 million and growing fast. One of the 10 fastest growing cities in America. 20% expansion since 2010, and nearly all of it drinking from a single source, the Edwards Aquifer. Picture this: a city of 2 million people drawing water from one well. That well refills when it rains. When it doesn't rain, and in central Texas, multi-year droughts are becoming the default. Not the exception, that well drops. Fast. The Edwards Aquifer has a defined critical threshold, the J17, monitoring well at 650 feet. Below that depth, the Edwards Aquifer Authority is required to trigger mandatory pumping restrictions. That threshold has been reached multiple times in the past decade. Each time, it was closer than before. Each recovery took longer than the last. San Antonio does have surface water access through Medina Lake, but Medina Lake regularly drops below 10% capacity during drought conditions. A backup that barely functions as one. The city has invested in brackish groundwater desalination and supplemental pipeline infrastructure. These are additions to the system, not replacements for it. They cannot substitute for the Edwards Aquifer at scale. Climate projections for South Central Texas through 2030 are severe. Extended drought cycles. Days above 100 degrees Fahrenheit becoming days above 110 degrees Fahrenheit and accelerating evaporation. Meanwhile, people keep arriving, drawn by the absence of a state income tax and housing. Costs far below Austin's. Nobody checks the aquifer index before signing a mortgage. Worst case by 2030. A sustained drought holds the Edwards below the 650-foot threshold. San Antonio enters Stage 5 restrictions. No landscape watering, no car washing, rationed household use. Growth projections that assumed water availability collide with the reality that the supply was never guaranteed. 2 million people discovered the single straw they were all sharing just hit the bottom of the glass. Number 4, Tucson. The city that already ran dry. Tucson, Arizona. 1 million people in the Sonoran Desert. And here's what the local real estate market would rather you didn't know. Tucson exhausted its own water supply decades ago. It has been operating on borrowed resources ever since. Tucson's local aquifers are 80% depleted. Not declining. Not stressed. 80% gone. Groundwater was extracted so aggressively for so long that in certain areas, the ground itself has physically subsided. The rock layers above the emptied aquifer compressed under their own weight. The container no longer exists. That water is not coming back. So how does a desert city of 1 million people survive without groundwater? They built a 336-mile canal from the Colorado River to central Arizona. The Central Arizona Project, the CAP, one of the most ambitious water infrastructure undertakings in American history. It is Tucson's only lifeline. There is no contingency. Here's where it deteriorates further. The CAP draws from Lake Mead. Lake Mead is currently sitting at roughly 35% capacity, with inflows declining steadily over 2 decades. Under the Colorado River Compact, when Lake Mead drops, Arizona's CAP allocation is cut first. That's not negotiable. It's the law. Arizona holds junior water rights. When there isn't enough for everyone, Arizona goes without first. Arizona has already absorbed Tier 1 cuts. If Lake Mead drops below 1,000 feet elevation, and the current trend points that direction, Tier 2 reductions would strip 30 to 40% of Tucson's CAP supply. A desert city with no local water losing a third of its imported water because a reservoir 300 miles away is draining faster than it fills. And then there's the physical infrastructure. One canal, 336 miles of open concrete across the Arizona desert. One failure point, one earthquake, one contamination event. Tucson goes dry, not in weeks. In days. Worst case by 2030. Lake Mead falls below 1,000 feet. Tier 2 or 3 cuts eliminate most of Tucson's primary supply. Rationing begins. 1 million people in the desert confront a reality that geologists have been quietly noting for years. Tucson was never built to be this large. Number 3, Los Angeles. 13 million people. No local water. Los Angeles. 4 million in the city, 30 million in the metro. The second largest city in the United States.
Next in line.
And 85% of the water flowing from every faucet, every shower head, every fire hydrant in LA was imported from somewhere else. 85%. LA has virtually no viable local water. The San Fernando aquifer is contaminated and effectively depleted. The Los Angeles River is a concrete drainage channel that hasn't been a meaningful water source in over a century. Nearly every drop keeping this city alive arrives through 3 separate systems: the Colorado River Aqueduct, the State Water Project from Northern California's Sacramento Delta, and the LA Aqueduct from the Owens Valley. 3 lifelines, all 3 under simultaneous, serious strain. The Colorado River Aqueduct, Lake Mead declining, compact renegotiations forcing reductions. California holds senior rights compared to Arizona, but senior doesn't mean unlimited. A 15 to 20% reduction in California's Colorado allocation is actively under discussion. That's millions of acre-feet that Los Angeles cannot replace. The State Water Project. In severe drought years, the SWP allocation has dropped to as low as 5% of contracted amounts. 5%. And Sierra Nevada snowpack, which feeds the entire Northern California reservoir system, is projected to decline 30% by 2030. The LA Aqueduct, the oldest of the 3, operational since 1913. It drains the Owens Valley, now an ecological casualty. Owens Lake is a dry lake bed and one of the largest sources of dust pollution in the country, because Los Angeles took its water. The aqueduct still runs, but its yield is declining. Then there's the infrastructure itself. The Department of Water and Power operates a system with an average pipe age exceeding 70 years. Some mains in older neighborhoods date to the 1920s. Thousands of main breaks occur across the city every year. Each break loses water that was imported hundreds of miles, pumped over mountain ranges, treated, and then soaked into the ground before reaching anyone. Worst case by 2030. The Colorado reallocation cuts LA's share by 15 to 20%. A simultaneous drought drops the State Water Project allocation to single digits. Sierra snowpack collapses. 13 million people in a basin with almost no local water watch 3 shrinking aqueducts deliver less and less every year. Number TWO Las Vegas. The desert wants it back. Las Vegas, a city that shouldn't exist. 2.2 million people in the Mojave Desert. And over 90% of their water comes from one place, Lake Mead. Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States, constructed in the 1930s behind Hoover Dam, designed to hold 9.3 trillion gallons, currently sitting at roughly 35% of capacity, the lowest it has been since it was originally filled. That white band visible on the canyon walls surrounding the lake? That's the exposed rock. Over 170 feet of water that is no longer there, etched as a permanent scar. Las Vegas responded with something genuinely impressive. In 2020, The Southern Nevada Water Authority completed a third intake tunnel, a $1.5 billion engineering project bored through the lake bed to access water at the lowest possible elevation. Because the first two intakes were approaching the point of pulling air rather than water. That fact alone tells you everything about the trajectory. Las Vegas also leads the country in water recycling. Virtually every drop of indoor water that goes down a drain is treated and returned to Lake Mead. The city has removed ornamental grass across entire districts. Conservation mandates here are among the strictest anywhere in the nation. And it still may not be enough, because the problem isn't what Las Vegas uses. The problem is the Colorado River itself. The 1922 compact that divided the river among 7 states and Mexico was written during one of the wettest years in the past 12 centuries. The entire water allocation system for the American West is built on an anomaly. And Lake Mead is where the shortfall accumulates. Inflows to Lake Mead have dropped 20% over the past 2 decades. The southwestern megadrought is, according to Tree Ring Research, the worst in at least 1,200 years. NOAA's projections through 2030 show it intensifying. The number that haunts Nevada water managers, 895 feet. The elevation below which water can no longer flow through Hoover Dam. Below that point, the dam stops generating power. Even the third intake has limits at extreme low levels. And the lake's surface is closer to that number than it has ever been. Worst case by 2030. Lake Mead drops below 900 feet. Hoover Dam goes silent. Las Vegas loses its primary water access despite the billion-dollar infrastructure investment. The casino industry, the economic engine of the entire region, faces operational shutdowns. Property values collapse. 2.2 million people in the hottest major metropolitan area in the country discover that conservation doesn't help when the source itself is gone. Las Vegas built an empire in the desert. The desert wants it back. They fought harder than any city on this list. They spent more. They innovated more. And it still might not be enough, because you cannot recycle water that no longer exists. Number 1. Phoenix, Ground Zero, Phoenix, Arizona. The fastest growing city in the United States. 5 million in the metro. 750,000 new residents since 2010 alone, more than the entire population of Denver, added in a single decade. And every one of our 5 metrics is flashing critical. Reservoir trend. Phoenix draws from 2 systems. The Salt River Project, managing local reservoirs including Roosevelt Lake and Saguaro Lake, and the Central Arizona Project, importing Colorado River water from Lake Mead. Both systems are in long-term decline, simultaneously, from opposite ends. Aquifer depletion. This is where Phoenix diverges from every other city on this list. In parts of the Phoenix metro, groundwater is being extracted at 3 times the rate it's being replenished. 3 to 1. For every gallon that seeps back into the ground, 3 are pulled out. The water table in sections of Maricopa County has fallen hundreds of feet. And unlike Tucson, Phoenix doesn't have decades of recharge programming to partially offset the damage. It has been pumping and expanding, and the math has finally caught up. Population to capacity. Phoenix is adding residents faster than it is adding water capacity. The infrastructure was designed in the mid-20th century for a fraction of the current population. And unlike coastal cities that can eventually pivot toward ocean desalination, Phoenix is landlocked. There is no ocean. There is no Great Lake. There is no undiscovered source within any economically viable distance. What exists now is what they get. And what exists now is shrinking. Climate projections. The Sonoran Desert surrounding Phoenix is projected to see a 40% increase in days, exceeding 120 degrees Fahrenheit by 2030. At those temperatures, evaporation from reservoirs and open canals accelerates sharply. Water is being lost to the atmosphere before it can be used. Precipitation is declining. The monsoon season, which once provided a meaningful recharge pulse, is becoming shorter and less dependable. Infrastructure. Newer suburban construction exists, but the Salt River Project Canal Network, the backbone of water delivery across the metro, is a single point of failure system. One major canal breach, one contamination event, one structural collapse. Large sections of the metropolitan area go dry. Not next month. That week. And here is the proof that this is not theoretical. In 2023, the Arizona state government quietly suspended new construction approvals across portions of unincorporated Maricopa County. The stated reason: insufficient groundwater to support new development for the next 100 years, which is the legal standard required under Arizona's Groundwater Management Act. They couldn't certify the water supply, so they stopped the building. The fastest growing metropolitan area in the United States had to halt residential construction because there wasn't enough water to supply the homes. That wasn't a climate activist making a point. That was a state government running the numbers and not liking what they found. Worst case by 2030? It isn't really a worst case. It's a convergence. CAP cuts reduce imported supply. Salt River Project reservoirs remain critically low. The aquifer continues declining at 3-to-1. The population keeps growing because people keep arriving for cheap housing and sunshine without knowing they're buying into a system that is structurally failing. And at some point, 2028, 2029, 2031, Phoenix becomes the first major American city to face genuine structural water unviability. Not a drought, not a difficult year. A permanent gap between supply and demand that cannot be closed. 5 metrics. 5 failures. No backup. No coastline. No margin. Phoenix is ground zero. This has already HPP. Some of you are thinking, this is worst case speculation. It won't actually occur. Fair enough. Here are 3 places where it already did. Cape Town, South Africa, day 0. In 2018, a modern city of 4 million people came, within 90 days of becoming the first major city in the modern era to completely exhaust its municipal water supply. Residents were limited to 13 gallons per day for everything: drinking, cooking, bathing, flushing. The average American uses 6 to 8 times that. The military was positioned to manage 200 distribution points. Neighborhoods fractured. Businesses failed. Property values dropped. They survived narrowly through emergency conservation, water transfers, and a fortunate late-season rainfall. But the lesson was permanent. A modern functioning city can run out of water. Flint, Michigan. Not scarcity, infrastructure failure. When Flint changed its water source to cut costs, corroded pipes introduced lead into the drinking water of 100,000 people. Children were poisoned. Blood lead levels spiked. Officials were aware for months before the public was told. Flint is metric 5 made real. When infrastructure is old, underfunded, and poorly monitored, the water reaching your tap isn't just scarce. It's dangerous. And some cities on this list are running systems older than Flint's. Jackson, Mississippi, August 2022. 150,000. Residents woke up to no water pressure. Nothing. The O.B. Curtis water treatment plant failed after flooding overwhelmed a system that had been deteriorating for years. For weeks, residents couldn't drink from the tap, couldn't flush, couldn't fight fires. Jackson wasn't in a drought zone. It wasn't running low on water. It simply had a delivery system too aged and too neglected to function under stress. One storm, one overloaded facility, total collapse. Now scale Jackson to 5 million people, 3 cities, 3 distinct failure types: scarcity, contamination, and infrastructure collapse. Every one of those failure modes is present in the 7 cities on this list. This isn't speculation. It's the recent past. And the recent past has a way of becoming the near future, what you actually do in OW things. First, know your source. Go to your city's water utility website. Search for the Consumer Confidence Report. Every municipal system in the United States is legally required to publish one each year. It tells you where your water originates, what has been detected in it, and how old the delivery system is. Read it. If your city draws more than half its supply from a single declining source, that's a warning sign. If the report mentions aging infrastructure with deferred maintenance, that's a warning sign. Most people have no idea where their water comes from. Change that. Second, build a water reserve. The federal baseline recommendation is 1 gallon per person per day for a minimum of 2 weeks. A family of 4 needs at least 56 gallons to start. Use food-grade storage containers, not old milk jugs or recycled bottles. Treat stored water with 2 drops of unscented household bleach per gallon. Rotate every 6 months. If you can build toward 30 days of supply, do it. When Cape Town approached day 0 conditions, 2 weeks would not have been enough. Third, factor water into major life decisions. If you're buying a home, relocating for work, or planning where to retire, check the water stress rating before you sign anything. The World Resources Institute offers a free tool called Aqueduct that maps water risk for every region on the planet. Use it. A $400,000 home in a city without a reliable water future isn't an investment. It's an expensive gamble. You cannot control the Colorado River. You cannot recharge a depleted aquifer. You cannot stop 750,000 people from moving to Phoenix. But you can understand the risks, prepare for the disruption, and make decisions based on data rather than assumptions. The faucet still works this morning. That's not a guarantee. It's just today.